Good evening, everyone. I'm Riley King. Welcome to this breaking news edition right here on the Riley King Network. As you can see right behind me, this is footage what happened today. A very sad day in the United States and in democracy. Breaking news. Pro-Trump supporters storm the Capitol building. Protesters went on the Senate floor, disrupted the count to elect President Joe Biden to be the next president. As you can see, these are images. Kellyanne Conway, former counsel to the president, is speaking right now. Let's take a listen to that phone interview.
And I've been in touch with the mayor's office, Mayor Bowser. I'm glad that the president has authorized the National Guard to go. I think that's very helpful. I know that she's got a curfew going on. That will be helpful. But this is a moment for all of us to come together. And George, I have to tell you, I hope these calls for unity are real. And I've thrown my hat into that ring as well. This, as I said about 4 years ago, that we are a country where the peaceful transition of power is incredibly important, and it's owed to each and every one of us as Americans. And I absolutely expect and hope that will take place. I'd also just like to say that when the president tells people go home and go in peace, he is directing them to leave the Capitol buildings now, and they ought to do it.
And we do have the video right now. So, Kellyanne, thanks very much for your time. Appreciate that. Let's show the President of the United States.
I know you're pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt. It's a very tough period of time. There's never been a time like this where such a thing happened, where they could take it away from all of us, from me, from you, from our country. This was a fraudulent election, but we can't play into the hands of these people. We have to have peace. So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel. But go home and go home in peace.
Well, the president did say go home there, but his message was wrapped in a lie. I want to bring in Chris Christie for more on that. He said the election was stolen. He said he won in a landslide. He said they're trying to take it away from you. You know that's not true. You said it's not true. I guess this is a beginning for at least for him to say to go home. Apparently we lost Chris Christie. I'll bring that to Terry Moran.
Well, it's a half a loaf at best.
Well, one of the things that President Trump insists upon is that he not ever be considered a loser. And I think this, in some ways, is gasoline on the fire. And in some ways, he might have lost control of these people. I remember I was at the rally where the crowd chanted, send her back about Ilhan Omar. And it seemed to me as if it was a moment when the crowd took that energy out from Trump himself, and they were in control. It's possible this mob is in control. This Trumpist mob is now in control, and he can't call them back. But that was a half-hearted effort at best. At best, again, he did repeat that the election was stolen, repeated that falsehood that the election was stolen. Sarah Fagan, it does appear, though, that you're starting to see more Republicans speak out more strongly about what they're seeing at this point, about what the president has done. We just heard Kevin McCarthy right there condemn the violence in clear terms as well, even though he disconnected it from any objections to the election. And he's right. You can't have disagreements without it going into violence. So is what we heard from the president enough right now? Do you expect more Republicans to speak in?
Okay, you heard the president say go home and go in peace, as you heard in that video of the president. We do want to let you know, Congresswoman Annie Kuster, a Democrat representing New Hampshire, was evacuated from the House chamber and is in a safe location with her colleagues following the instruction of U.S. Capitol Police. As you can see, this is a scene right outside the U.S. Capitol. Protesters took control of the Capitol and broke into it. Let's listen back to ABC News.
They said, as we said earlier, they're not leaving. This is beyond what Donald Trump says now. They say they have a right to be here. It's their freedom of speech. And if I say the president said everybody has to leave, they said it's our right to stay here. And in fact, George, I actually think the crowd in some cases is building, and it's a more radical part of the Trump supporters. I could see what I believe are probably the Oath Keepers and Proud Boys within the crowd and forming groups. They do have communications. Still, in this area where the security entrance is to the Capitol, they are still demanding to be let in. If you talk to them about what happened inside the Capitol, they blame the Capitol Police for that, and they keep saying this is a peaceful protest. But once again, George, there's really, you can see Capitol Police, I believe, up there, keeping people back. There aren't as many people on the steps, but on the sides of the Capitol, the north side of the Capitol, and walking around here, these people have no intention of leaving. George?
Okay, Martha, thanks very much. I want to bring in Josh Margolin, one of our national security correspondents. And Josh, one of the big questions we were dealing with all day is why weren't the Capitol Police, why weren't law enforcement officials better prepared for what's unfolding?
Look, George, honestly, law enforcement has a lot to answer for here. Somebody dropped the ball because we in the civilian world, in the private sector, were well aware of online threats and chatters, they call it, calling for violence, calling for people to show up. You know, they were saying things that I don't think we want to repeat here about the types of violence they were calling for. But this is weeks. Companies in and around the Capitol had their own intelligence operation telling them to be careful of their people, to be on guard, to take precaution. Law enforcement certainly knew that there was at least a serious threat of violence, even if they didn't necessarily know precisely what was going to go on.
And right now, what is happening now that it has gotten out of control, and we've seen some combat, some law enforcement in combat gear heading to the Capitol. We've seen them deploy on parts of the Capitol step. What is the plan going forward as far as you know?
Well, obviously what's happening now, as we've been reporting, and people on our special report have seen people mobilizing, they're trying to bring in the National Guard, other agencies. But, there's a complex, situation when it comes to law enforcement at Capitol Hill. The police there, it's a small police force. They protect Capitol Hill. They are separate from the FBI, from the D.C. Metro Police. They were doing their jobs. But they were basically by themselves. And now what they're trying to do is bring in the other kinds of police, D.C. Metro, the Secret Service, the National Guard, the Federal Protective Service, that whole universe of law enforcement around the D.C. area. And, we've seen this so many times, especially with the protests and riots that broke out over the summer and spring. It's so much harder to put this back together after violence breaks out. Had they had a large-scale force in advance, the argument could be made that they would have been better prepared to protect Capitol Hill and to keep the protesters from breaching the building.
Thank you, Josh Margolin. Pierre Thomas, so they're just going to wait them out, perhaps?
As Josh alluded to, you've got to get the force together. You've got to get all the different...
Okay, this is live footage from the scene of the Capitol building, as you can see. We do want to update you on a post that was posted at 4:14 p.m. Entire DC National Guard activated to deal with the protesters. The entire DC National Guard has been activated by the Department of Defense to respond to the violent scene at the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. The D.C. Guard has been mobilized to provide support to federal law enforcement in the district. Acting Secretary Miller has been in contact with congressional leadership, and Secretary McCarthy has been working with D.C. government. The law enforcement response will be led by the Department of Justice, said Chief Pentagon spokesman Jonathan Huffman. White House press secretary tweeted that Trump had directed the National Guard and other federal protective services to deploy, but Trump has called on and told protesters they need to leave. He made a video and told them to leave now. As also Vice President Mike Pence and others have as well. Let's listen back to ABC News.
This attempts to bring upon a civil war as an attack on the Capitol. And while what we saw today seemed to be mostly organic, clearly there were threat actors in the midst of protesters willing to incite, willing to encourage people to cross lines, and some of those came prepared for a fight. And I think the concern that I have, I'm sure that is first and foremost in the law enforcement officers' minds that are on the scene, is which of these individuals that have breached the Capitol are willing to cross the line to violence. They've already crossed other legal thresholds, but we hope and pray that they don't go further at this point.
Yeah, so what will they have to do? What is the best way for this to be taken on at this point, given the fact that it's such a huge complex, and there's so many people right now on the steps and inside the building?
Well, I think multiple people have already noted that this is a massive failure on the part of the law enforcement agencies, particularly the Capitol Police, who have jurisdiction over Capitol Hill. Another day, another time, we'll do the lessons learned and make sure this never happens again. But it's really difficult now that the breach has occurred. It's going to have to be room by room, very slowly, methodically, and it will require a lot of manpower, which it sounds like they're in the process of regrouping and preparing for that. I mean, the other factor here that would help tremendously is if the president would come out and condemn what is going on and tell everybody to go back home, go back to their hotel rooms. That would help a lot. It would not disperse everybody, but it would at least dwindle some of the numbers, and it would allow law enforcement to be able to get a handle on the situation much faster if we could disperse some of the large crowds that are there.
Right. In that video, he told them to go home, but it was wrapped around his false claims that the election was stolen from him. Elizabeth Newman, thank you very much. Let me bring in John Cohen for more on this at this point. You say, as a former law enforcement official, they can't wait.
Yeah, we lost an opportunity to de-escalate this situation when the president released the statement where, as you just pointed out, he blended together this idea of going home and the fact that the election was stolen. That's why these people are here. And I would actually argue this wasn't just simply an organic, spontaneous protest. This is the result of weeks and weeks of disinformation being spread by the president, his supporters in Capitol Hill, people who support him in the media, individuals on social media. These people are reacting to the planning that took place in social media and that disinformation. So what do they need to do now? They're going to need to declare this as an unlawful assembly. They need to give people opportunity to clear the grounds peacefully. Then they need to remove people from the building. They need to clear the building. We saw videos of people going into the Capitol with large knapsacks. We've already had reports of explosive devices being located around Washington potentially. They need to make sure there's no explosives in the Capitol. They need to clear the grounds of the Capitol. And then they need to clear the street. And they need to keep people off the streets this evening because, as Peter pointed out, there's probably a very high likelihood that violence would continue if you have large groups of people in and around the streets of D.C. That's where law enforcement's going to be focusing now.
And that's the question. Will the crowd be diminishing or not? It appears to have been growing over the last couple of hours. John Cohen, thanks very much. Let me bring Chris Christie back. We do have him connected right now. Well, Chris, the president did come out with a statement wrapped in propaganda.
Yeah, George, listen, I think that the statement was a one step forward, two steps back attempt. The president needs to make it unequivocal that these actions by these protesters is absolutely un-American and reprehensible. And there can't be any ambiguity about that. And I think there was a lot of ambiguity in that statement. I'm glad he did at least what he did. It's better than having done nothing. but it's certainly not what should be expected of a president in this circumstance.
It's hard not to contrast the message saying we love you, you're very special to supporters, that you're right, that the election was stolen, with the words he had for Black Lives Matter protesters all through this summer, calling for law and order.
Well, George, at the end of it, what you're supposed to do as an elected official in this country who takes a constitutional oath is to always remember that the office you hold is bigger than you. Your responsibility in that office is bigger than you and your own personal interests. And I think that what that video showed was that the president was still placing his personal interests ahead of the interests of the country. And that's what we've been doing for the last 8 weeks, unfortunately. And this is a result. What we're seeing on the air right now is the result of that. And that's what we need to make sure we get back to in this country, is that these offices are a temporary public trust that you hold and hold with honor. And you can never allow your personal interest to overcome the interest that you're elected to serve. But unfortunately, I think the video showed that while the president got, better than saying nothing or just tweeting what he had been tweeting before, it was nowhere near sufficient to send the right kind of message, in my view. That conduct on Capitol Hill is unacceptable, it's un-American, and it has to be renounced in those very clear terms, in addition to saying, go home. Because he said that, but you got to say more.
Chris Christie, thanks very much. I want to go to Martha Raddatz out in the streets of the Capitol. The situation escalating?
It is, George, and it looks like they're starting to clear this crowd a little bit right behind me. Outside of the Capitol, we heard 3 flash bangs, which means they're trying to push these people back. They were running very briefly. This is the area, at least on our side of the Capitol, where we are, where there has been the most action. This is the area where these people are saying, let me in, let me in. We also heard some glass breaking back there. We obviously don't want to get any closer to that area, but they are starting to move out. There are areas here where some of the Trump supporters have started to leave. But we have some of these people moving out. Obviously, we don't have all of them moving out, and it's pretty wild up here, George. It really is truly out of control. We have lines of Capitol police officers up there, but there's virtually no police presence here. And you're starting to get, again, like the oath keepers that I walk by, and they're clearly making plans about something, asking if they wanted to go back in, and they said they did not. But I have no idea what they're up to. I don't think law enforcement has any idea what they're up to. We have some helicopters circling overhead. But we also have a curfew here at 6 p.m. And whether they start clearing people out before then or after, there's just no telling.
Martha, we just got a flavor of what you've been dealing with all day. Have you ever felt personally in danger today?
I mean, there's definitely threatening remarks to us. I would say this is a very dangerous situation. And as you know well, George, I've been in a lot of very dangerous situations. But it is so horrible to know we are in America where this is happening, on Capitol Hill. I'm not in Baghdad. I'm not in Kabul. I'm not in a dangerous situation overseas. We are in America. And when I know some people mentioned this today, when the rest of the world looks at us right now, it is just appalling to think about the fact that we are on Capitol Hill. It's been breached. Someone's shot inside. And all of this chaos right behind me, right in front of me, everywhere I look. And certainly there are people who are threatening us. And it is very different from Trump rallies. I often said at Trump rallies, they turn around and say, we hate you, go home. But then 2 minutes later, they're shaking your hand. This time, you don't feel that vibe at all. It is, they're warning us, they're threatening us, they're telling us we're fake. That's the least of the problem. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about that building and American democracy and what this all says about that today and how out of control this is and how we were not ready for this. And they don't care what Donald Trump just said. They really don't. It is so out of control and chaotic now. I don't know what the president can do, but I think it's going to take law enforcement to get these people out here, not Donald Trump.
Assault like we have never seen. You said you've been in war zones all over the world. Tanya, I was picking up on what the president was saying. I think we saw an essential truth of President Trump and his approach to the office in those remarks. He began with, I feel sympathy for you, I love you, we love you. His first and foremost goal over the last 4 years, if you look at every action, every statement, is to keep that core of the core of the core base bonded to him at the cost of everything else.
Okay, again, if you're just joining us for this breaking news edition right here on the Riley King Network, breaking news, pro-Trump supporters storm the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Here is live images. As you can see, we will show you that right now, as you can all see. This is live image right here. I do want to talk about that. New Hampshire members of Congress safe and aimed sight on U.S. Capitol building. All 4 members of New Hampshire congressional delegation reported they are safe after thousands of violent protesters stormed the Capitol building on Wednesday afternoon. U.S. Rep. Chris Pappas said he was in a safe location with several blocks from the Capitol after being evacuated at the order of Capitol Police, who Pappas said warned him they suspected they were pipe bombs around the building. Pappas said he was able to escape through a rear door at the Canyon building, but he said other lawmakers in Longworth and Rayburn buildings were unable to do so and had to shelter in place. In an interview from the safe location, Pappas blamed President Donald Trump for uprising. He said, "I can't believe this would unfold, but it's clear these people were indicated earlier," Pappas said. The President of the U.S. has essentially laid side to the Capitol by indicating protesters and convening them that somehow there was election fraud that's depriving him of re-election. U.S. Rep. Annie Kuster was also safe, but not without needing to wear a gas mask to get out of the House chamber. The Congresswoman in the House chamber when this occurred said her spokesperson, Jen Fox, and she was given a gas mask and evacuated. She is currently in a safe location with colleagues. Fox had no further immediate details. Both U.S. senators also reported on Twitter they were safe. "My staff and I are safe," tweeted Senator Maggie Hassan, "and we are sheltering in place and will continue to follow law enforcement guidance. Thank you, Capitol Police, for working and keeping us all safe." "My staff and I are safe," Senator Jeanne Shaheen said, heeding the warning. Let's listen in to the mayor of D.C. She is speaking right now. Let's listen right now.
Mr. McCartney. This afternoon, I announced the citywide curfew for the District of Columbia beginning at 6 p.m. this evening, going until 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. During the curfew, no one is allowed to be outside in public places other than essential workers, which includes credentialed media engaging in essential functions. As you can see from video images, the unlawful behavior inside the United States Capitol building. I continue to urge all Washingtonians to stay home and stay calm, and if you see something, say something. But above all, stay home. The behavior that we are witnessing is shameful, unpatriotic, and above all, it is unlawful. Anyone who has engaged in these activities, continues to engage in these activities, will be held accountable. There will be law and order, and this behavior will not be tolerated. The Metropolitan Police Department has been deployed to assist the United States Capitol Police in restoring order to the Capitol, and our Chief of Police will lead the command to clear the Capitol building and establish a perimeter around the Capitol. I have requested both the Virginia State Police and the Maryland State Police to deploy officers, and they have engaged immediately to deploy officers to the Metropolitan Police Department to help regain control of the United States Capitol. I have also invoked several days ago a standing mutual aid agreement with our surrounding jurisdictions, and I want to thank them for deploying. Those jurisdictions include Arlington County, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, as well as Baltimore City. We want to thank them for sending their officers in, assisting us with public safety in the district, as well as the response to the United States Capitol building. Additionally, I want to acknowledge and thank the New Jersey State Police, who will also be assisting the Metropolitan Police Department. So with that, I want to turn to Chief Conte for a situational update. Secretary of the Army will make comments, and we will take brief questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, and thank you, Mayor Bowser. My name is Robert J. Conte III. I am the Chief of Police of the Metropolitan Police Department here in Washington, D.C. As you are aware, demonstrators came to our city this morning to exercise their First Amendment rights and were largely concentrated in the area of the National Mall. Following the President's remarks, a large crowd began to march eastbound on Madison Avenue Northwest and Constitution Avenue Northwest. As the demonstrators approached the United States Capitol grounds, there was a noticeable change in their demeanor. They breached the fencing along the U.S. Capitol grounds and confronted police lines surrounding the building. MPD was requested by the United States Capitol Police to provide assistance with crowd management, and due to the violent behavior towards the police officers there and their intent on gaining access to the Capitol, a riot was declared. It was clear that the crowd was intent on causing harm to our officers by deploying chemical irritants on police to force entry into the United States Capitol building. As you are aware, they were able to gain access to the Capitol building, and I can confirm that one civilian was reported to have sustained a gunshot wound inside of the Capitol. Details of the shooting are not immediately available, and the situation remains under investigation. The Metropolitan Police Department...
There you have it from the Chief of Police. There's confirming that one person was shot inside the Capitol. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser talking about the curfew she's imposed at 6 p.m., setting up a security perimeter now around the Capitol this evening, as well as we see those protesters continuing in the Capitol. I want to talk to Congressman Markwayne Mullin from Oklahoma, who's in the Rayburn House Office building right now. I know you've tried to engage with some of the protesters today. What did you learn, Congressman?
Well, I wasn't so much just trying to engage with them, I was trying to keep them from getting shot. When they started breaking the glass out of the chamber, it sounded like shots were fired. Unfortunately, I've heard shots fired before, and that wasn't it. And so I was talking to them because a couple of the people got excited. If you've seen the picture, there's some, obviously Cat Police, rightfully so, had their guns drawn. And so I was telling them, guys, you're going to get shot. You're going to get killed. Is this what you really want to do? And then we just had a conversation to some degree. And there was a couple of them that was reasonable. There was a couple of them that wasn't. There was a couple of them that was just, they were antagonizers, and all they wanted to do was cause problems. And you can't reason with individuals like that. Unfortunately, this doesn't represent America and our democracy. We have a right to protest, but not like this.
Yeah, it's hard to reason once they've broken through all the barricades in the Capitol. And these images coming from inside the House chamber are just stunning right now. From the talks you had with these protesters, do you have any sense of what they want to happen?
Some of the ones that were there, unfortunately, was just looking for a fight. That's what it was. Unfortunately, they were there to antagonize the crowd. That doesn't represent the rest of the crowd, but some of them were, and they were antagonizing. They brought them along. But I want to tell you, the Capitol Police there,
a lot of them got injured. I went down to the triage center that was in the basement of one of our house office buildings, and I visited with each one of them. And there was numerous there. Numerous. If I use the word 25, I'd be underestimating it. And all of them were cut or bruised, had been hit. And that doesn't represent a peaceful demonstration. That doesn't represent what we've seen at Trump rallies or anything else. This was a different group of people. And even I found it interesting when I was visiting with some of the Cat Police. They said that these weren't your supporters. The supporters were fine. The ones that attacked us had evil in their eyes. This was separate from the protest. Even the Capitol Police, these are the guys that were injured. These are the guys that had cuts in their face and had their nose broken and all kinds of stuff. And unfortunately, that person that came through the door, I was right there when they came through the door and when that person got shot. And it's a tragic situation that took place. But it left the officer no other choice, and now that officer, that person that got shot, their life has been forever changed. Obviously, their family's life has been forever changed, but also changes that officer that had to discharge his weapon, because if you ever discharge your weapon the first time, it changes you in some degree, and this stuff should have never happened, George. It's sickening and sad that this took place.
Well, there's no question about that, Congressman. We're glad you're safe right now. You tried to reason with them, even as you saw hate in their eyes as described by the police. It was news to us to learn that many police officers sustained injuries right now. But, in the face of all this, what we heard from the president in the last hour is to these people, we love you, you're very special.
Well, I listen, I wake up every single morning, George, and I say love the people, love the call. There's a lot of people that get agitated. Politicians are kind of the catch-all when people get upset. And I understand what he's saying. I love them too. I don't hate them. I do love them. Legitimately, I do love them. But there's a right way and a wrong way to go at it. And everybody that did this the wrong way, they should be punished to the fullest in the law, every one of them. And hopefully we can prosecute them because they should be. But I still respect their ability and their rights, their constitutional rights to protest. But we don't do it this way. This isn't how we handle it.
You don't breach the Capitol. You don't seize the Capitol. Congressman, thank you very much.
Absolutely don't. And it's fortunate that a lot more civilians didn't get shot, because Cat Police showed a great restraint by not doing so. A great restraint. That's where professional law enforcement took place. That's all we need, please, around us all the time.
Congressman, thanks for your time. Stay safe there in the Capitol today. I want to bring Martha Raddatz back. The police presence around you growing?
It sure is, George. We walked about 100 yards down from the Capitol because we could see lines of police forming. You can see, like behind my shoulder there, this side, that side, standing by, forming that perimeter that Mayor Bowser talked about. Again, we're on the north side here, and there are long lines of police officers here. There are long lines of police vehicles the other way, and we are just over an hour from curfew. So it seems certain that they will probably try to clear out this area at some point once we pass that curfew point. We still see people over in the security area who say they want to get inside the Capitol. They are being kept away, but they aren't leaving. Although I would say some of the crowd has cleared out. More of the protester types who I was with down earlier near the White House, they've started to leave. But again, they keep saying they have the right to be here. They keep calling this a peaceful protest, although it's been far from it. George.
Okay, Martha, thanks very much. Let me bring Tony Cardenas in. Congressman Tony Cardenas from California. Where are you, sir, at this point? I mean, you can't say the exact location. I assume you're in a safe location. Are you still in the Capitol Hill complex?
I'm still in the Capitol complex. I feel safe at the moment, and my prayers go out to all of those officers and all those individuals who are doing everything they can to keep us safe. And I heard what my colleague said. Yes, these officers have shown tremendous and that's the respect that any individual deserves. But when somebody tries to break into the capital of the United States of America, that right there is an atrocity, and it's a stain on our history forevermore.
And the question is, where do we go from here at this point? Have you received any indication from leadership on what's going to be happening at the Capitol, how the Capitol is going to be cleared, whether you'll be able to get back to business?
The only thing that I could tell you, George, is that for the safety of the staff and the members to get back to the democratic process that commenced this morning,
in counting the ballots of the Electoral College, as we do every January 6th, every 4 years. We will resume that as soon as they can promise us that the facility is safe. As one of your callers just mentioned a little while ago, they're going to have to check every nook and cranny to make sure that none of these individuals left anything nefarious that could cause any injury, again, to the staff or the elected officials, and all of us are here to follow through with our duty.
Were you able to engage any of the protesters personally?
No, I was never that close to any of them, and but I know the Capitol Police. I thank them every day that I see them. I look into their eyes, and I know that they're men and women hugging their wives. And again, I'm praying for them, and I know the kind of hearts that they have. They're tough, and they know how to do their job, but at the same time, they do stormy dreams. And I'm so glad that unfortunately, that many of them have been injured. It just got reported. But I hope and pray that is at a minimum, and that we can move forward as quickly as possible with our democratic process.
Congressman Cardenas, thanks very much for your time. We're seeing video now of members of the protesters, the mob. A period of smash media equipment right there, as you see the police looking by and perhaps lighting a fire. Rachel Scott has been on the scene during the day. What can you tell us about what you're seeing? Apparently we lost Rachel as we see the standoff there at the Capitol. But we do have Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, the chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, a member of the House leadership. A day you thought you'd never see, I'm sure, Congressman.
Without question, George, and we should pray for our nation and make sure that we never see a day like this again. The Capitol was breached. It was stormed by traitors, people engaging in treasonous and seditious behavior incited by the President of the United States of America. And he should tell his supporters in clear and unequivocal terms to stand down and stand down immediately.
That's not what you heard from the earlier statement from the President?
The President seems incapable intellectually of communicating a clear and direct message to his so-called supporters who have breached the Capitol, injured officers, placed innocent lives at risk, and turned America into something that I thought we would never see in a democracy anchored in the principle of the rule of law. But we are going to return to the Capitol Dome as soon as it's safe. We're not going to allow mob rule to take over. We're going to complete our work. We're going to certify the results of the Electoral College. The people have spoken. The Electoral College has spoken. The courts have spoken. Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States of America. He will be sworn in on January 20th.
Do you have any idea on how this is all going to unfold, when that's going to be able to happen, what the plans are to secure the Capitol?
We're following the guidance of the Capitol Police, the Sergeant at Arms, who, as I understand it, have called in additional resources to secure the Capitol. The members are being patient but anxious to return to our constitutional responsibilities. Obviously, we will follow the direction of our public safety officers, but we're committed to the principle that no one is above the law, and we have a constitutional job to do. We are going to do it. We will not abandon our post.
And going forward, as you said, Joe Biden has been elected. He will be inaugurated on those same Capitol steps in just 14 days. How does the new Congress move forward, we hope, in some way, together, and to heal the wounds from what we've seen today?
Well, Joe Biden is the right man at the right time with respect to bringing our country together with someone who was indicated from the very beginning on his election that he's not going to be the president just for Democrats. He's going to be president for Democrats, Independents, and Republicans, for those who voted for him, those who voted against him. And he's got the experience, the credibility, the authenticity, and the intellect to do it. But I'll also say, George, that there has to be accountability for what took place democracy, and the Congress and the Capitol and the rule of law should not be tolerated, and all options should be on the table.
I want to follow up on that because your colleague, Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, is saying she's drawing up articles of impeachment for President Trump for what she's seen since the election, for the abuses of power she's seen since the election. Is that something that's on the table?
We haven't had an opportunity to talk as a caucus. We haven't had an opportunity to convene and discuss how we move forward in the context of accountability. But when I say all options are on the table, I mean all options should be on the table.
Including impeachment.
And every other process.
Including impeachment.
All options are on the table.
Congressman, thank you for your time today. Stay safe. Good luck in the coming hours. I want to bring in Trish Turner from the Capitol as well. Trish, you've been getting some reporting on the senators starting to meet and try to figure out the way forward.
Yeah, that's right, George. We were a group of the media, including myself and one of my ABC colleagues, Ali Kokorin. We were escorted by Capitol Police and ATF officers to one of the Senate buildings. We've been asked not to say what the location is. Kind of seems like they brought us here to make sure that we are safe along with the senators, so we're near where they're meeting. They're in one of the larger hearing rooms on the Capitol complex, and they are they're meeting, trying to figure the way forward. As you heard from the congressman there, they are determined to move forward. It's unclear if they're able to actually keep the Senate debate session going on, over the first objection. We did come in contact with one of the supporters of the objection, Senator Mike Braun of Indiana. We tried to ask him, he said none of this should be tolerated, none of the violence should be tolerated, the looting, and storming of the Capitol. But we tried to ask him if this might spur him to withdraw the objections, because we know that there are at least two more that Senate Republicans were prepared to support, and he would not answer that question. So unclear how they're going to move forward. We did see, we've seen senators moving in and out. I don't believe there's a lot of business they can conduct in this hearing room, but we do have full reporters inside there. It's sort of a continuity of government situation at the moment, which is rather surreal. But that's the situation where we are at the moment.
Okay, Trish Turner, thank you very much. As this has all been unfolding, more news has been made in the political world. I want to bring in Rick Kleiner, our political director. It is now official. John Ross of the Democrat has won in the state of Georgia.
Yeah, it feels like a long time ago, but only 24 hours ago, it was voters in Georgia, and both of those Senate seats are flipping.
Okay, if you are just joining us and watching this breaking news coverage right here on the Riley King Network, let me show you some images of this whole situation and things. Let's take a look at that right now. Such a sad, sad day in democracy today. So, here's a look at some images. As you can see, sorry about that, everyone. Here's an image right here from a scene today. Here's another image from the scene. People going into the Capitol building. So sad. Look at this scene here in the chamber. Just a sad day. Protesters ruining this history-making day. Look at this scene here. Awful. Just sad to see this happening to the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. And we'll be sure to show you more images as we see more images populate up on the screen. Let's take a live look outside from the Capitol building right now. As you can see, it looks like tear gas or smoke is happening. Let's look.
So so many issues. Joe Biden will be able to go big, certainly much bigger than he would have envisioned if the Republicans were still in control of the Senate. And just remarkable to have this happen today, to have 24 hours, after we saw these races in Georgia, to have to see what we are seeing, to see the divide in the Republican Party play out in this way is just remarkable.
And to see what we are seeing right now as you were talking, those detonations on the steps of the Capitol as you were talking, smoke being cleared as well. People didn't seem to scatter as the detonations took off, as there we see some more of them as well, these flash bombs. I don't know who we have down there. Is Martha Raddatz anywhere close to that scene? Martha, can you tell us? Rachel Scott. Okay, Rachel Scott, you're down there. Can you tell us what's happening there, Rachel?
Police have finally taken down this section of the Capitol. If you take a look just right behind you, can see them clearing out the final demonstrators and protesters that stormed the barricades, climbed over, pushed up, passed, and stormed inside of the Capitol building here. This entire area, George, was completely blocked off. I want to show you. You can see some of the gates and the barricades that were set up here. On the other side, they have all been torn down as these demonstrators and protesters charged up those steps and into the Capitol building. I talked to so many here today. They came from Florida. They came from Georgia. I was on a flight from Georgia after covering those runoff elections just yesterday. They said they wanted to stand by the president. They wanted to help him fight an election that he overwhelmingly lost. And they said they would not accept the results until he said that he had lost this race. They feel like they were answering a call directly from the president here today. And as that message came out, we have seen some of the demonstrators in this area clear. On the other side of the Capitol building, we watched as some of those demonstrators climbed up scaffolding, climbed onto the steps, banged on the glass, chanting "Fight for Trump," chanting USA. But George, I gotta tell you, there is just one image that I cannot get out of my mind as I'm talking to you here. And it was just a few feet away as we were standing, watching all of this unfold. Ambulances rushing out one woman. She was gushing out blood. They rushed her into that ambulance and drove her away. We do not know what the condition was, but it was just a really tense moment here. And watching these matter of events just unfold and take a turn in a few short hours, George.
A heartbreaking one, Rachel. Okay, thanks very much. I want to bring in Brad Garrett, FBI Special Agent. Brad, Rachel was just describing how they...
Okay, we're gonna take a break from this breaking news coverage. If you want to see more of this breaking news coverage, we will share a link with you to the ABC coverage, and you can continue watching that. We're gonna get ready for our evening broadcast that will air around 6:30 p.m. We're gonna have a quick bite of dinner and things, and then we'll be back on air. So be sure to stay with us when we get back on air. But you can watch some ABC News coverage. We'll share a link of that live stream for you on that. So stay tuned for more updates right here on the Riley King Network. We'll see you back here in a little bit. Bye.